All right. Good evening, everyone. Hello. This is episode 4 of Builder Interviews. I guess that I just have to stick with that name. That was just a really simple name that I came up with for this video series, and I wanted to think of something more clever, but 4 episodes in, I guess I got to just stick with it now. But I'm joined today by what?
I can talk now.
For being an English teacher, English is not always very easy for me. I'm joined by Alan Britten. Alan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Alan. I post as the Mokana Man on Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot. I've been a YouTuber for 7-8 years now, and I've before that been going around the same handle on a few very old forums. So I've probably been around the community for about 10+ years.
Did you ever used to hang out on Tim's Child of Mecha page?
Yes, I've hung out with Tim and around there as well. I sort of spend a little time all over the place and jump from community to community and just hang out a bit.
So I think if people are watching, if they've spent any time in the community over the past, 10, 15 years, something they've probably seen something from you at some point. Yeah, actually just earlier today, just so that I would know as a reference, I checked your channel to see when it started. And yeah, it was 2009, so you've been going at it for quite a while.
Yes, when I started, I was inspired mostly being on forums. Every time we had someone new, they would ask the same series of questions: how to get into the hobby, filling seam lines, painting, and that irritated a lot of the senior modelers. So they started putting very heavy rules about search the forum, read it, only ask questions once you've gained a certain amount of knowledge and shown a certain amount of work. So I thought if I could make a small series of videos answering all these basic questions, whenever they ask, it could just be popped up, watch this video, and then ask any questions afterwards. And it's 10 minutes, everything's there to consume. And no one was really doing that at the time in the English on YouTube. It was mostly Japanese tutorials.
Yeah, at that time, I guess it really wouldn't have been too much. I mean, there was really only probably a few big YouTubers around at the time in the community, just Henry and Prime 92. And
Too Old for Toys.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Guiltar to memory, yes.
But okay, so there's just a few things there that I was going to ask, but just concerning trying to answer people's questions like before they ask them with YouTube videos would be nice, but unfortunately doesn't always work out as well as you hope, right? Because
if you can answer most of their questions and then they have little bits of information, everyone has a different capacity to understand and learn. So after they watch the few core videos, they'll generally branch out in different questions in what sort of model they're going to build or the style they're going to head into. So that was quite doable. And then once further the same question started rising, video was written about that topic and created. And I've just kept working on that model for the past several years. And to this day, I still got a long list of, I see a lot of these questions. A video probably should be made, even though there's a wealth of videos out there, people still don't find them. They sort of just expect to ask in a forum or a group and someone just deliver a source.
Yeah. It's of course it would be nice if people would search before asking you, but yeah, at least you got that video there. You can just easily refer them to whichever video it is. So yeah, that's usually what happens for me. If I get asked something that I know I've already done a video about, I can just refer them right back to it. Recently, I've been getting an influx of people asking me about, like saying they're going to be going to Japan soon, ask me what shops they should visit when they go to Japan. It's like, I've got like a playlist of like 30 videos all about that already.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of YouTubers who have already visited Japan and they've got videos and pictures and whatnot. You can go to this shop, you can go to that shop. And when I went to Japan in 2012-13 with a few Google searches, it tells you about where to go in Akihabara, where to go in Dendentan and Osaka. And once you get there, Google Maps search actually shows you every address, phone number, and whatnot.
Yeah,
And then
even
you
like
have enough time to visit everything.
Yeah, Google Maps even shows you for a lot of places, even like the opening and closing time of the stores too, which is nice.
That's very, very helpful because a lot of shops I found close or open quite late at about 10, 11 in the morning.
Yeah. Right.
But they close probably later at night, which is pretty good when you finish work or finishing touring the country. You could spend a few hours at night in Akihabara and then go to your hotel.
I suppose so. Generally, I mean, I guess I'm comparing it to living here in Korea. Like, the place or the time that a lot of places close down is generally much earlier in Japan compared to Korea. I mean, most places are closing 8 or 9 o'clock. It's not that late, I guess, but I don't know. It depends on whatever you're used to in your own country, I suppose. So I just before getting into talking any more about that, I want to come back to all the YouTube stuff. But just getting back to originally, how did you start in modeling stuff, building stuff?
I started modeling in primary school. I found my father's old stash of model kits and had a crack at building them, being into Lego previously. So just a bit of super glue or PVA glue, poster paints, whiteout. They were quite atrocious, but the experience was a lot of fun.
And military models, I guess?
Military models, all aircraft, Cold War, World War II type content. When I made some friends in high school and primary school that also modeled, some of them also did World War II, but Warhammer was a new thing. So everyone was getting into painting the miniatures, playing the game. I followed the lead, but at the same time, anime was also quite popular. A lot of the kids were watching Dragon Ball Z and Evangelion, Gundam Wing on Toonami, and it's just a case of watching the show, talking about it, building Warhammer models, because Gundam models were available, but they just weren't as inspiring or interesting as, let's say, the Zoid models or the Warhammer models, being the late 90s, early 2000s, you had your wings and whatnot. So I avoided those for a very long time.
When did you finally get into Gunpla, or finally decide to try Gunpla?
It was early 2003, 2004. My grandmother bought me a master grade Zeta Gundam. Just as a spur of the moment thing she found in an op shop. It was about $2-3. And the issue was someone, the local community had a very old anime Gundam building community, and I would watch old VHS tapes that were fan subbed by hand in Korea or Japan, passed over with some model kits, and they'll spend $1 for a few tapes and a kit. So someone stole the inner frame, modified and scratch built a kit, and left the armor and whatnot, and sold the box cheap. So I received this box of just armor pieces and a few parts. So being into scratch building with Warhammer and whatnot, I built my own squatting robot with it, and that was a lot of fun.
What did you build, like for the frame? What did you use for that?
I did. It still looked very much like the Zeta Gundam, but its wings spread out a bit as per Dragon Wings, and it had a tail, and it sort of had this metallic, fiery wearing effect that I saw in Wing when the Wing Gundam was trying to shoot the colony down and was flying onto the Earth. So I was partially inspired by that and the Dragon and other lofty ideas like Dragon Ball Z, as you are when you're a young teenager. So sort of this super fighter robot thing from my imagination.
I don't suppose you still have that around somewhere or have pictures of it, do you?
I do. It's not on me right now, but the pictures is on my Facebook page. It's very, very poorly built and painted by today's standards. But once I finished it in about 2 years' time, I took it to a competition and got to meet a few people that started off the Australian gunpla community, Scott and another guy named Mike.
So now these days, I know you're still not. I mean, you build gunpla sometimes, but you build a mix of stuff. So you want to talk about like what kind of stuff you like to build, or what attracts you to different types of models or whatever nowadays?
About 50% of my output is Gundam kits. The current Gundam kits are very cool, but I enjoy World War II tanks and armor quite a bit. So I build quite a few of those, and enjoy the World War II tank modeling community. They're very kind and supportive, yet very inspirational about finding pictures from history or stories and trying to recreate them, and encounters of the tank from word of ear and stories, and not so much historical content. So there can be a lot of fun had of those communities. Also being a big fan of anime when I was more younger, and a bit so now. Anything from resin figures, some of the large 1/7 that happens to be in certain states of undress, or some of the Kotobukiya kits like the Zoids or the arm frame girls. A lot of those are quite fascinating. They're a bit different. The process and the thinking behind it is really so different. It's almost like when you get burnt out from building too many Gundam kits or doing the same thing over and over again, the experience is completely new and refreshed. So every time I cycle between the three major subjects, it never gets old or boring.
When you're building tank stuff, do you try to keep it like, I don't know if you call it canon or realistic? I mean, like, are you going by like realistic? I mean, they're already realistic, but you know.
I'm very fond of historical accuracy, but some people in the community can take it quite far or harshly by only basing it off models that exist today in museums. I sort of like to look at a painting or a story or a picture or an encounter a veteran may have, but there's no evidence of it ever occurring. And trying to recreate something of someone's encounter or imagination in person. And also with the release of the anime such as Girls and Panzer and World War II content being a bit popular in pop culture, bringing that and World War II and crossing it together can also be a lot of fun.
How does the general community react to that community?
The military community has, or at least the tank community has embraced it. It's shown renewed interest. A lot of fresh blood has entered. The people that are not so much a fan of it don't build it themselves, but they can appreciate the amount of historical research and accuracy that has gone into the anime. When you watch the anime and you're not too familiar with history of World War II, it could just be a bunch of bouncy high school girls being a bit silly. But once you look at certain actions, colors, references, books and maneuvers they pull out, you know it's an example of a story or a historical tidbit or something from a book or a movie. And there's just a constant array of references that you point out and enjoy, as well as the very sub-story. There's sort of multiple layers to the show.
I've never watched this, so I only know of it just because I've seen the models and stuff, but that's all I really know about it. So then you got into doing YouTube, and you said just because you wanted to try to help answer some of these questions. And so, like, what has been kind of your motivation for continuing to do YouTube, or what has been your goals or goal?
The original goal was just putting together a library or a collection of tutorials to help people. And I thought while I'm doing it, a lot of people learn from work in progresses and other finished examples of models. And you talk about your thoughts building it, the process of building it, the products you use, how you use it, and your thoughts on the finished model, your own personal critique, if you're just enjoying it as a standalone piece or you intend to go in a competition. And as the years gone by, requests have come in comments, new technologies and methods and products come out. It's just sort of, this is quite new, I want to try it. And as I'm trying a new product, technique, method, I just feel automatically obliged to share it with my audience.
Yeah, like unfortunately I don't have time usually to watch all your videos, but whenever I see your videos come out, I try to at least catch a few minutes of them just to see, because you're always showing like some really cool techniques or something, or just good information, some stuff that's worth trying. So that's why I think that a lot of people ask or they want to know about airbrushing. So I think you're, at least for that specifically, you're a really good source of
making an airbrush tutorial is very daunting. A lot of people have attempted and tried, and how people have a capacity to learn and study and get the confidence to airbrush. Airbrushing is very daunting, and the biggest thing is getting someone to lose the fear that it's very delicate. There's a lot to think about and spray, and just do it, fail, and keep trying. It's almost like trying to perform a pirouette as a ballet dancer or something. You've got about 1,000 things you need to consider to do a perfect spin about 4 or 5 times, and if you muck up, you land on your face. You muck up airbrushing, you ruin the model, or you ruin the nozzle. I attempted to make a tutorial and wasn't very satisfied. I did teach enough people, but I wasn't too skilled myself. And come to the conclusion, I'll just do a vlog or a diary series of my thoughts, new techniques I pick up, and just how I maintain and run my airbrush on a monthly basis, and people can tune in and out. And I feel that constantly putting out content like that, even though it may not be very well presented or a bit mediocre on the audio and editing side, it may have a better chance of teaching people than just a 10-minute video saying, consider this under this condition. Good luck. Fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting way to think about it, as like a diary of your working with your airbrush.
The diary started because I wanted to improve more myself for the Gunpla Builders World Cup and become a better airbrusher from compared to other people around the world. And later on, as I say in the description, this is not a tutorial. This is just me mucking around and experimenting. I got enough feedback and people watching that appreciate it, and they may be more experienced and provide feedback and criticism, or they might be newer and pick up and learn things and try it out.
So I know, I want to come back to that in a second, but I know another kind of YouTube series, or a series of videos, there's YouTube videos that you do sometimes, or Q&A videos as well. Do you get a fair amount of audience when you're doing those?
The audience is not very big, because it's a case of a few people asking questions, and then it's sort of like me and them sitting in a room intimately and talking to them. So about 5-10 people line up, ask a question, and you've got their audience guaranteed. And then there's probably about 100, 150 people extra on top of that sit in and either just amused, entertained, or they're looking for any bits of information they pick up. So they don't get a very, very big audience, but they're popular enough with enough people asking and watching that it's sustainable and worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you do that and that you make that available. It's nice to.
It's also the easiest video to make. It takes just no effort whatsoever. Where other videos take potentially up to many months or weeks to make.
Yeah.
And there's just all these parallel videos and states of work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. Q&A videos are just kind of, like hangout videos are easy and fun. So I mean, like, it's good for everyone, right? But yeah, it's a good chance for people. So like those of you who are watching and maybe watching this video, just make sure you follow Alan's page. You usually post about that on your Facebook page, like first.
Yeah, I post on my Facebook page a couple of communities that I'm very friendly with, that I know that do contribute questions and whatnot. So there's multiple points where the link is posted that people will be able to see. I've actually got one running at the moment, so next Friday I'll be sitting down and answering all the questions.
Okay, yeah, next Friday. And I think you actually, now that I think about it, you usually do a video like before that, like announcing when you're going to do the next video, right?
And I give them 1 week to collect their answers, and if they don't quite jump in time, then it's a 1 month wait. But if anyone leaves a comment in the form of a question or PM me, I always answer it or help them out in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's like usually the only when we talk online, it's usually when I have a question for you. So I'm usually hitting you up when I have a question about something. So Yeah, they're quite.
I'm also aware that a lot of people are too intimidated to contact people, especially people who may have a reputation. I don't think much of my reputation or fame or anything, but some people are just too shy to ask. And sometimes when they build up the confidence, they'll be very polite and say, "Very sorry to disturb you. Do you have a minute to answer a question?" And it's sort of a case of I see everyone as a colleague, some better, some needs assistance, but people go at different speeds. And I'm very happy to talk to almost anyone about modeling, which is a very fun topic to talk about.
Yeah, sure. And I don't know about you. I'm assuming you probably do as well, but I get all the range of, I guess, politeness of people asking questions. Sometimes, yeah, we'll be like, "Oh, sorry to bother you. Like, I know you're busy. I just wanted to know if I can ask a quick question like that." And then other times people will be like, "How do I use Top Coat?" That's all, like, first message ever sent.
Yeah, I don't get a lot of messages like that, which is very, very strange. I did receive a few rude people very early in my YouTube career, trolls and whatnot. And then after a while, once people defend you and whatnot, they just don't really occur. The trolling occurs probably more so on Facebook, where people are a bit more rude, but they do it in an open forum where they can get an audience to see them do it and get a response.
Yeah. So for people who, just getting back to the airbrushing now, for people who are maybe wanting to get into airbrushing and just kind of really intimidated, like you said, they're kind of unsure about where to start and all of that, what's kind of like the most basic advice you give to those people?
Generally, experience the same with me and probably many people I've taught. The best experience is to sit down with someone else that airbrushes, get them to set it up, chuck the airbrush in your hand and just go crazy on a piece of paper. And that just gives you the confidence automatically. But I understand a lot of people don't have the opportunity for someone to sit down next to them. So I generally try to arm them as much information as possible, as easy as possible to sit down, set it up, be ready to spray. But spray on a piece of paper and try to get lines as neat as possible, some circles, some squares, and color in a piece that's not important. And once you have the feeling of how easy it is, then you can sort of stretch out and explore. But slowly, as your airbrush starts to gum up and clog and require maintenance, that's when the real trouble sets in, and trying to explain that you need to thoroughly well clean it and return your airbrush to the state as when you bought it to get the same results as you used it for the first time. So when you're able to draw a straight line and it clogs up and it's not drawing a straight line, you can clean it and maintain it, try to draw a straight line again. And when that line's very good, you know you're in that sweet Goldilocks zone to keep airbrushing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I've been, I guess, using my airbrush for not that long. Can't be too much more than a year and a half, I guess. Maybe 2 years anyway. Not that long, but yeah, the painting itself is not that complicated and quite fun. It's like, yeah, like the whole maintenance and cleaning and all of that is when it gets less fun and kind of more worrisome, daunting, kind of. Yeah, like when you have to clean it or when something's not working right. And yeah, that's kind of the more complicated part.
This is why another thing that I teach when you buy a new airbrush, the first thing, and I've learned this trick from a YouTuber called Dr. Cranky, is you pull apart the airbrush, have a feel for the parts and reassemble it. And you pull it apart and reassemble it so often that you know the process so well, the parts are sort of etched in your head. It's sort of the same technique that gun users use in the military or the police force. If something goes wrong with their weapon, they need to clean it and maintain it immediately in the field. It's sort of the same with an airbrush. And once you're very familiar with it, you try to keep a regular cleaning schedule. And the more often that you clean it and maintain it, the more comfortable and quicker you're able to do it. So what may be a daunting task that you may be sitting there for a few hours doing it, which could be modeling time, if you are very quick and disciplined about it and do it once every model's finished or once a month, it's just a quick half-hour job. Unless something goes wrong.
Yeah, you never know, right? I mean, just in terms of getting into some technical things, because I know one question that people are always asking me about airbrushing is what products do I recommend? I know you've used probably almost every brand out there, I would imagine. So, and I know that's kind of a difficult question to answer as well, but if you were going to recommend any certain products, is there anything that you would recommend?
I'm very lucky in the city and country I live in. It's a very densely populated with modelers. So we've got many hobby shops of disciplines, and we almost have available every type of paint there is. So I have had a chance to experiment and play with all different types and style. But in the end, the city that you live in, you use what's available to you. If you do have the same situation where you may be living in a place where all the paints are available to you, I generally find lacquers to be the smoothest and easiest to airbrush, but there's a bit of an environmental issue of breathing in the fumes, thinking out the house you may live in if you airbrush indoors. And
Yeah, safety is very important there.
Yeah, where I live in a almost like a shed environment or an annexed room from the rest of the house, so it's sort of just a glass tin room disconnected. So in those sort of situations, maybe alcohol-based acrylics might be the next best thing, which is also very easy to airbrush, etches to your parts and maintain. But then other people may want to hand paint or they rattle can, and there's just a different variety of things. I always recommend try everything. Buy a different set of paints for every model you build and try to finish that model with those sets of paints. And once you've tried everything that's available to you, return to what you've had the most fun and easiest experience spraying with to that one. It's just a shame to pick something that you've been told is the easiest and then you never deviate off. And when a new brand is released and on shelves and right available to you, give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, is it's hard when people are asking me that, you know, they're asking from all of these different countries around the world. I don't know what they have available where they are. So it's hard to recommend something when I don't know what is even available there. I mean, with the internet, you conceivably can get whatever you want pretty much, right? But yeah, different things are going to be available. And that's really good advice, actually, to try to paint one kit like each with each different kind of paints, then see what you like. That's a good idea.
And also remember, at your hobby shop, your owner and some of the staff are also hobby experts. They build themselves, they paint themselves. So it's sort of like a bar. You ask, what does the house recommend? And try that first. And maybe the owner goes, I've been painting for 20 years, I like that. If it's someone that doesn't model and just sell kits for the sake of selling kits, they may not be as ideal to ask. And if they're a bit hesitant, then yeah, it's not worth listening to their recommendation. But maybe someone in the shop will just arc up and talk your ears off, and they would be worthwhile listening to, because sometimes in different countries and environments, there's different climates, temperatures, obstacles to overcome. It's very difficult to spray or hand paint in a country that has high humidity or very, very low freezing temperatures. So to get advice such as what's the best weather and best paints in that combination with airbrushing or hand painting, it's sometimes best to talk to a local modeler.
Yeah, exactly. And
they may have a brand that they sell that's most ideal for their climate.
I think another thing that maybe you would mention as well, that I think is also important to mention when having this kind of conversation with someone who's asking about that, is that you also kind of have to remember that this hobby generally is not that cheap. I mean, there's a lot of cheaper options for a lot of things, but I mean, you are going to have to spend some money if it's something that you think like you really want to get dedicated into painting and airbrushing, especially, and all of that, right?
The hobby can be expensive, but sometimes people sort of attach themselves to brand names, and they're very adamant about, I've got a bit of money to spend, I'm going to buy the most expensive airbrush, the most expensive nippers, the most expensive everything. And it becomes a bit of a trend like those God hand nippers. Does Gundam models need to use them? No, not at all, but it's very trendy to be seen with them, and people are spending enough money for a whole master grade. And it's the same with airbrushes. there are $10 airbrushes or $20 airbrushes manufactured in China where they're a bit trickier to maintain, but you can get the same results out of them as a first-class airbrush, which probably doesn't need as much maintenance, and they look very, very nice. And it's the same with paints. If hobby paints is a bit out of your reach or budget, there are types of rattle can paints or paints you can buy in the tin, thin down and treat, and then mix all the different colors necessary that may reach your budget. I've considered and encountered modelers that may be what would be considered a third world country. They blow all their money on the Bandai kit and they'll spend the month building it, but they only have enamel household paints available to them, electrical nippers and a Chinese airbrush. So they can put together a whole toolkit for about $10 US. Yeah. They can also produce the same finished model when they've practiced and built their skills up as someone living in Japan, Australia, the United States that's got a $5,000 budget of paints, kits, compressors, laptops, all sorts of goodies.
Yeah, right. It's about working with what you've got.
Yeah, and that just goes down to a little research and again talking to local hobbyists. But some people that are very held on to brands, take them with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. That's definitely it. Like even for me too, I should really try to try other products. Like living here and then before living in Japan, it's where I can get like the name brand products and stuff like that, and it's as cheap as it's going to get for that
it's
stuff.
Very cheap in Japan to buy name brand products, so it doesn't make sense to import something that only Americans use, and it costs you a fortune.
Yeah. So like, as I know, like in a lot of American modelers like really love, like for example, Alclad paints. Here in Korea, those are really expensive compared to like Tamiya or Gaia Notes or Mr. Color paints.
Alclad used to be the best metallic paints on the market a very long time ago, and they've sort of not changed any aspect of their product in the past 10-15 years, and there's paints being sold by Mr. Color and Gaia Notes that are practically equal in quality and pigment density. But there's a lot of people still standing by that Alclad are the best paints in the world.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've seen and from what I've used, I really don't use metallics that much, but very limited experience with them, to be honest. But especially like from some Gaia Notes metallics that I've painted are really nice. Works. So anyway, so what is I know you do a lot of community organizing there too, like organizing events and stuff, or at least participating in events in Australia. So I guess this is kind of just a good segue from talking about utilizing your community or utilizing local shops for getting information. You do some event organizing, things like that. So you want to talk about a bit about that?
Yes. Well, what a lot of people are actually not aware what I do locally for my community, which I don't think is too much. Professionally, I work in the events and entertainment organizing industry, so a lot of this is automatically instilled in me. I've taken over a local hobby club to assist with paperwork and hiring a venue once a fortnight where we gather, build, and as a club attend workshops, model competitions, and the Australian heat of the Gunfire Builders World Cup. We've sort of been doing it and gathered resources for so long. The club's about 11, 12 years old, where we've got a permanent site, a bit of a budget and whatnot. So from that position, I get invited by some local clubs and committees and whatnot to give a bit of advice or recommendations or come and help, as well as the Australian Bandai distributor. They send me some kits from Bandai to help promote the product a bit.
That's cool. What's the name of the group that you're involved with there?
Our club is Mecca Workshop Melbourne.
So any of you guys watching there, possibly from Melbourne, you can check out their group. So you said you guys usually arrange a get-together once a month, right?
Once a fortnight.
What's that? I don't know how
Oh,
that is.
sorry, a fortnight. A fortnight is every 2 weeks, half a month.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't know if that's an Aussie term or what, but yeah.
I mean, I've heard it before, of course, but I didn't really, I guess, know what it means. I guess I thought it's just like generally, I didn't know it has like an exact measurement, I guess. Anyway.
It might have a different measurement elsewhere, but yeah, we're just aware of every 2 weeks, the second and fourth Saturday of every month.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I'll have to try teaching that to some of my students here. Anyway, so when you guys are in the group, how many members you usually are getting in there?
We're a decent sized group. We probably have about 30 old permanent members, and we attract anywhere between 8 to 12 people a meeting. We're a bit, we used to advertise a lot, but we're a bit low key. We sort of meet other people at other events or larger Gunpla Builders, or sorry, not Gunpla Builders, Gunpla Builders Australia club meets. And if we find people that are cool or really fun to hang out with, we sort of invite them to come back and hang out with us as well.
And all different kind of skill levels, I imagine.
Different skill levels and discipline. We're not really a Gunpla club, but more so a general modeling club that just happens to have a lot of anime garage kits, Gunpla, Kodabiki Zoids, military, wargaming, a whole plethora of different disciplines.
Yeah, just about everything. So you mentioned a few times now about Gunpla Builders World Cup. What's been your experience there? How many years have you entered there? Since the start of it in Australia?
I've been starting in Australia and we've done it 7 times. And I've attended every single one of them.
Oh, there you go. And what has been your experience with that? You enjoy it, I guess. You keep doing it.
I definitely do enjoy it. I find it more of a social event. It's when a lot of the community comes together from every state in Australia, and Australia is quite a massive landmass. So visiting people, you only get one chance a year, and it's an opportunity to visit restaurants, have a drink, talk about each other's work experience, teach methods, and just be a bit silly and have fun. But at the same time, you focus quite extensively of producing the best piece of work or model you can, gathering everything you've got, and competing for that prize of a trip to Japan to compete representing our community and country. So you've got the social aspect, but you've also got the hunger and the excitement of trying to win and outpace people that are far better than you.
Yeah, I was hoping to enter last year for the first time and didn't really get around to it. And then this year, I don't know really if I will or not. But I kind of have that a little bit worry too in my mind too, that once I participate once, then I'm gonna be like really like stuck on that and like really focus a lot on that, like from then on, like almost addicted to it.
There's no issue with that. My recommendation to anyone is it doesn't matter your skill, your background, even if you've only been modeling for 6 months, come and try it, because even though you might not even stand a whisker of a chance of placing or getting any decent exposure or winning, you get a chance to meet and talk to the more experienced modelers, get a chance to request critiques and see where there's weakness in your working style to improve, as well as just to get to know your community and make friends. And from your situation of being a reporter YouTuber, you get to share that with the rest of the world from your inside knowledge of meeting these people, taking photos of the kits and getting an insight of how the kits are judged, critiqued, and how the inner community works and the friends that you make there. So if you go at it as more of a social event and you spend a few months building a model, being more casual or more serious and spending 6 months or throwing everything at it, it's purely up to you. But how addictive it is, it's very addictive, yet kind of easy to burn out afterwards.
Right. Do you participate in any other kind of competitions there? I imagine there should be some other
I
ones there,
do.
right?
There's really worldwide. You have three major style of modeling competitions. The Gunpla Builders World Cup, which is a Bandai run one.
Mm.
Wargaming painting, which
Mm.
is mostly just wargaming miniatures. And many, many years ago, the most prominent competition was called the Gold Demon, run by the Games Workshop Corporation from the
Mm.
UK.
Mm.
And that's just purely focused on painting of miniatures of their manufacturer. And the most prominent one out of all of them is the IPMS, which is more so military modeling organization, but they're sponsored and backed by many big companies such as Tamiya, Hasegawa, Trumpeter, Revell, all those other brands, and they've got
Mm.
chapters all around the world, such as Europe, the United States here, and whatnot.
Mm.
So I compete in the Australian heat of that as well.
Mm. Which one is your favorite?
Socially, I enjoy the Gunpla Builders World Cup more, and it's also a better competition, more creative, so you get hungry, you want to compete for that ultimate prize.
Yeah.
But for experience of how many models you see, what you learn, who you talk to, the IPMS is probably a better experience in that regards. It's also a much older order and organisation, and it's also more likely to prepare you for competition modelling and get you involved in the greater scale modelling community as they invite the wargaming crowd and the gunpla crowd of recent years.
Mm. One thing that I definitely want to talk about here before we get into start taking some questions, but I will just say, everyone who is watching live, I just want to take a minute to remind you guys that you will have a chance to ask any questions that you guys have for Alan in a little bit here, maybe 15 minutes or so later. So if you guys do have any questions for Alan, you can start thinking about that, and we'll get to that in a bit. One thing I do want to talk about with you as well is just kind of your modeling style as well, because I think you have a really unique style. But before that, just a kind of simple question, but I know it's a question that often gets asked in Q&As and stuff, is do you have like a particularly favorite Gundam series or Gundam kits, a particular favorite kits or series of kits maybe that you really like?
Again, I do watch a lot of anime. I think the anime I probably enjoyed the most, as well as the series kits, is the original Mobile Suit Gundam anime series. I think the HGUC line has a lot of unique subjects, such as your Xeon suits and Federation suits. I got introduced to that anime through the PlayStation 2 video game, which was very faithful to the anime story, to my surprise, when I watched that a year later. And there's other... sorry?
Which game was that?
Which game? Federation versus Xeon.
That was a good one.
PlayStation 2. Yeah, that was banned shortly after it was released from the Western market, because the buildings that would collapse after you shoot them would resemble the 9/11 attack. So it's
really?
not a very well-known game, and most copies were removed off the shelves and auctioned to the tight-knit community.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I had a copy of that game. I still do at my parents' house. I think it was that one, and then Encounters in Space, I think, was the other one I played quite a lot of. Similar kind of game. But yeah, those were fun games. But anyway, so the original Mobile Suit Gundam and kind of HGC line. I know recently you've built a couple of those like really, really old kits. How was that?
Yeah, a few years ago I was very well known for building old kits, and I've sort of taken a break from that, but I'm getting back into it. I do find the detail, how they come together, their articulation and looks very unique and refreshing. The sad part is that style of engineered kits are never going to receive new releases, as Bandai is always looking to improve themselves and go further. But the older kits are re-released, and I do find some of the originals that will never get re-released. And I find them to be more of a challenge to not only finish them, but strategically paint them, detail, scratch build them to look pleasant on display and stand up against a lot of the modern kits that people snap and display.
Yeah, they have. They. I mean, one thing that they definitely have is charm, right? They're really charming, all
They
those little
definitely
kids.
do.
Yeah.
And they're normally, instead of being catted or milled out, they're normally hand sculpted, handcrafted, molded, and
Mm-hmm.
injection molded. So when you look at the reverse end of the pieces, you can see that they're not as well detailed, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all scratched up with sandpaper, and you can see sculpting marks and whatnot, and other inconvenient locations that are just not well seen.
Mm. Yeah, they're cool. I have quite limited experience with them, but that's always something that I would like to try more is trying out a few of those really older kits just for the experience and just because of how charming some of them are. There's a few
I
that I
do
would
have
really
a
love.
bit of a challenge for you. If you're able to find, build, and finish one of those 160 scale original 80s models,
Mhm.
that's quite an experience.
Okay. They're usually pretty well accessible here.
They're very easy to find. They're very, very
Yeah,
popular, but they sell them for generally under or slightly over 1,000 yen, so they're very cheap.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But to do the work to just finish them up, I mean, I guess it's just like just huge chunks of plastic, right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same as the once 144 scale kits, except
Yeah,
massively blown up. But as they're
yeah,
massively blown up, so is their faults.
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh
So
man,
we're talking about seam lines that you can
yeah,
potentially stick your finger through.
yeah, right. That you'd be using like a full bottle of thin cement for removing the seam line on a leg.
Oh
Yeah.
no, the cement method won't work. You're going to have to use sculpting putty to fill it.
Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds fun. All right. Well, yeah, that would be a bit of a challenge, even more so than I suppose. I've
But very, very few YouTubers have finished it. I haven't even finished the challenge myself. I've got one in work in progress, and it will be finished one day. But the hardest part's over. I just haven't painted it yet.
okay. All right, I'll think about that. I've got like only about 1.5 million works in progress still ongoing at the moment, but it's
As
something to
we
think
all do.
about. Yeah. I know. I know. Recently, maybe a couple months ago, uh, Henry, I know, bought one that I think he was planning to do something with. I don't know if he's aware of this challenge, but
It's
he's,
within
he's the
his
only other person that
skill
I've
level,
seen.
definitely. If you want to do some research, there's an old YouTuber called Biker Wolf X. He was a friend of Too Old for Toys. He was an outback Texas like cowboy character that rode a motorcycle and worked off an oil rig. He was very, very hardcore and was very fond of showing off his Transformers collection as well as his gun collection.
Huh.
And some of his old school Gundam kits were very, very cool and successfully built and painted a 160 kit. If you find his catalogue of videos and watch that one video, very,
Uh,
very fascinating. And he's a very beloved older YouTuber that a lot of us adored until he stopped making videos.
huh. But his videos are still on YouTube to see.
Oh, they're still available.
What's the name again?
Biker Wolf Trash.
Biker Wolf Trash.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll have to check that out. Sounds interesting. Anyway. All right. So yeah, then just the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is your style. Um, how would you describe your style? Because I definitely, in my point of view, I think that there's a certain style there, but I'm wondering how you would describe it. What do you think?
My style stems from my imagination a bit and how I approach kits from an older style of building models. Coming from a military and sculpting background, I suppose I enjoy older and weathered kits. That's probably the best I can say.
Mm. Uh, what I noticed when I was seeing all your kits is a lot of they look really heavy, and there's that really weight to a lot of them, and I'm usually like a lot of darker colors and not a lot of like really bright colors going on, and like you said, usually a lot of weathering, things like that. So I can see that influence from like armor, building a lot of armor, that carrying over into your other non-armor stuff as well.
I'm
Yeah.
very heavily influenced off the Soviet Union from the Second World War, Cold War, where
Mm-hmm.
they were very, very basic. They were very when they looked at warfare, they looked at pretty much the quickest way to build, manufacture, maintain, and keep an operational weapon on the field as cheaply as possible. But they focused heavily on making sure that they can manufacture enough units, as well as supplied ammo, fuel, food onto the battlefield. Yet if they were cut off, they could sustain for long periods of time. When I imagine a Gundam or a mobile suit fighting on the earth or space or whatnot, it's a prolonged war. A lot of people going through famine and short supply of food and whatnot. So it's quite a depressing time. It's a dark time. People die. They're very scared of their morality. So you just think that things are drabber. You're fighting in the dark depths of space where you die. Your body's never going to be found. So it's been such a depressing world. I would like to reflect that in the models. There's nothing bubbly or fun or teenagey like you might see in some of the cartoons.
Yeah. No, like super robots and like a bunch of bright colors and everything like that.
Which I understand, some of these cartoons are designed for kids and all that, but when I look at it from my point of view and my own imagination, I just see something that's a bit more depressing and darker. And I think there's a bit of appeal in that, because people fight to overcome that darkness and depression and work for a better world.
For sure. That's
through fighting, which will never happen.
So
it's in vain, and that's a bit amusing as well.
So I think what is it? Gundam Thunderbolt has kind of had that kind of theme going on, or that tone going on. So have you really been enjoying that?
I've only watched a tiny bit. I've enjoyed it so much. I'm sort of saving it for a time to sit down and watch it later and just really enjoy it. I've got a lot of the models, but again, I'm sort of saving that it's something that I enjoy so much. I want to give it justice, and as well as my massive work in progress backlog, I haven't quite gotten around to getting to that yet.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, oh man, but yeah, Thunderbolt is great. I think you'll really enjoy it if you kind of like to think of that.
Yeah, it's got the jazz theme, and I've just got a feeling from watching the disabled veterans, the jazz, the whatnot. It's very inspired by post-war Japan's depression and their how they were introduced to Western life through occupation. So I can see that that's a heavy influence from historical inspired aspects.
Yeah, it's quite like it's definitely interesting when there's like manga or anime that kind of is dealing with that topic, because like manga and anime itself like kind of grew in popularity as a result of the war, and so then when that like reflects back to the war. And
the beautiful thing is, post-war Japan is a very taboo subject over there. Disabilities, especially from the war, is also very taboo. That's why you don't see a lot of anime or pop culture looking at anyone that may be disfigured or disabled or any sort of post-war or jazz aspect. They normally are not quite celebrated or popular unless they've got a lot of financial backing or support. It's sort of an aspect of Japanese history they much rather forget and not get it brought up through pop culture.
Yeah, definitely. There's that too. So I guess when it comes to like looking for inspiration for your builds and stuff like that, I know you've talked about like for like military models, you're looking at actual like real history and things like that, and for I guess Gunpla and robot stuff, you're thinking about this kind of that situation, I guess, of the war. Is there any other places that you look for, or things you look at as inspiration for your kits?
I look at inspiration as far as I can when I'm at work or traveling to work. There's a large petrol refinery, and they've got these giant steel towers and vats of solvents that are rusting away with heavy equipment. Or when I'm working on equipment that's work that's stored outside, I study how it rusts or chips or sort of gets damaged. If I ever visit a museum that has rusted trains, tanks, weapons, I take interest in looking at it, as well as any sort of location I visit, the environment, how does the asphalt or the ground look, or how dirty or clean is the location. I think one of the most inspiring places I visit when I went to China in 2015. I was fascinated in Manchuria of how cold and high the mountains were and the locations where they fought the Korean War.
Mm.
And
So like
built
basically,
a diorama based off that.
so it built. Sorry, it sounds like you're looking at inspiration for how to make your work more realistic. Then basically,
Not necessarily exactly realistic. It does get stylized, and I can steal back to cartoons where things are exploded and over exaggerated. But then I take whatever experience I had from travel, work, whatever, and insert the anime style, insert in whatever stories or history or pictures or videos I watch.
Before we start taking some questions, then, is there anything else that just, I mean, I've kind of been asking you just some questions, but is there anything, other topics that you would like to maybe talk about yourself, or something that you maybe want to mention about yourself that we haven't covered yet?
No, I can't think of anything on the top of my head, actually.
All right. Well, if you think of something, just say so. If you guys have any other questions now, feel free to ask some questions in the chat. There's just a question that's just kind of someone had just recently asked. I don't know if this was necessarily to you, but just in the chat there, someone asked about tips about painting camo, which I know you've done plenty of that. So what would you suggest for painting camo?
There's two types of camouflage. If you look at earlier camouflage, World War One, World War Two, the two styles they'll do is they'll get a mop and bucket or a giant brush and a bucket, and they'll just slap it on as sloppy and terribly as they can, and they'll walk across it, and it's just absolutely dreadful and disgusting. Another one is they'll get a large spray gun, especially the Axis countries, Germany, Japan, whatnot, and they will neatly spray the camouflage patterns with a large spray gun, but mostly because they're not trained in operating it, it splutters and makes a mess, and they spray on incorrect things. So if you ever see a weapon that's camouflaged in person, if it's the true weapon from the Second World War unrestored, especially late war, it's quite sloppy, it's quite miserable looking, it's there to hide the weapon, not look pretty necessary. If it's restored, if they got a wreck and sanded it and resprayed it and whatnot, they have a tendency of doing it more neater and trying to bring a bit of romance to the fact of defending their country or patriotism or whatnot. So if you're going for something that's straight from the battlefield and hastily made, you can airbrush it as finely as possible to camouflage marks. Though if we're looking at a scale of a Gundam, they're going to be spraying it with a very, very large spray gun, probably something a little smaller than your airbrush. So whatever spray pattern you can get, that will be quite realistic on a Gundam. But if they're painting it with giant rollers or giant brushes, you'd get the same result from a brush. So you've got your soft edge spray guns, airbrushes, your hard edge from rollers and whatnot. A good way to get it very neat, if you want to go for that neat, nice, restored look, laying blobs of liquid mask or blue tack or poster tack or wall tack and spraying around it can also give you a soft or a hard edge effect.
I would imagine you probably have a video on that, but I know I've seen on your Facebook page as well. I know you've had work in progress photos and stuff of using the tack on the kits, and I'd like to try that sometime. I've never actually tried that technique, but
it's very good. But the most important thing is you can recycle the blue tack and just peel it off, re-roll it, the paint flakes off. And it's only after a time the thinners withdraw the moisture, and then you buy more later. So you get about 2 years shelf life.
It's lasts a lot longer than that. It's very good
for ramming into ball joints and polycaps when you're airbrushing a Gundam, that it doesn't interfere in areas that you don't want to thicken up when you have the articulation, more importantly, than the camouflage.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Just blue tack, just any kind of like tack in general can be quite useful for a lot of things. So that is one tool that I think maybe be easily missed if someone was making a list of tools to be
And
prepared
it's
to start
cheap.
airbrushing. Yeah.
Yeah, you might even find it in the household. You might not even have to buy it. Just take some posters down.
Yeah. uh, so another question here is how wet should I paint clear coat?
How
And,
wet?
yeah,
Not too wet that it pulls and droops and
yeah.
sort of floods detail and causes you an effort, but as wet as you're comfortable with if you want to get a showroom shiny finish.
Mm,
Though if you sort of apply a clear coat and it's a bit orange peely and rough, applying a second coat will fill it out and make it quite glossy. And if you're still not satisfied, after a few days drying, it can always be polished.
mm. What do you use for a polish? Like a polishing agent?
Um, Anything from 3,000 to 7,000 grit sandpaper. I find
Mm,
3,000, 5,000, and 7,000 very useful. I'm actually working and scripting a video on that topic now.
okay.
With polish, because some polishes can be quite heavy on solvents, it's best
Mm,
to stick to a hobby branded one. Mr. Hobby does a very nice polishing set.
mm, okay. One thing that I'll ask, because this is something that I'm still kind of struggling with, uh, just for me personally, is just even my kits. I'll sand stuff, and I'll do like surfacer, paint, top coat, and then I'm still finding sometimes the paint chips really easily, and I don't know why, or I don't know what I should
What,
do to help that.
what primer are you using?
Usually I'm using Mr. Surfacer 1000 or 1200.
Sometimes what I find that people will paint their kit, prime, paint, do everything in the course of a couple of days, have it finished, they start assembling and play with it.
Yeah.
So I find that different paints will dry, and it dries to a touch, but it hasn't necessarily chemically hardened and chemically
Mm,
etched. And when
mm,
you lay down a primer unmolested, it's sometimes good to allow it a few days to just completely harden, or if you put all the layers
mm,
of paint and whatnot, multiply the days and allow it to chemically harden before you assemble, to allow it not to chip or whatnot. A lot of
mm,
people who work in resin find this to be a bother. So normally when a resin modeler finishes painting, they will allow their work to sit and rest for a week or so to chemically harden, and then very
mm,
carefully lift the masks and assemble the work. So
mm.
maybe you're going a bit too fast,
That could be, yeah, because
which would
there
most
is
likely be
times.
your thing because you've got deadlines for your channel and videos and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about deadlines. It's just the problem of having very limited time in general. So it's like if I have the time, I want to do it like as quickly as I can because it's so hard
And
to
another
get
thing
time.
is, if you're rushing and you build it as quick as possible, once it comes
Mm,
to assembly, be
mm,
very, very careful.
yeah,
Pose it once or twice, take your photos, but
yeah.
don't be too keen to play with it, thinking that it's dried, it's hardened, it's ready to go. Think
Mm,
of it that it's still hardening, and your mindset will be a bit different. You treat it a bit different, and it may damage a lot less.
yeah, right. I suppose that could definitely be something because there's times when like I'll spray surfacer and then paint like 1 hour later, not that much later, and that's I suppose probably not enough curing time because like you say, it's dry to the touch, but not totally cured.
A good example I learned from a forensics show is when you get a ballpoint pen and you do some writing, and they find this
Mm,
in murder cases and whatnot. When you write, there's different states of how dry it is from many hours after writing, but a
mm,
ballpoint pen will not dry until 2 days after. So if you write a note and you spill a drink on it 1 or 2 days later, the ink is going to run.
mm,
Where if you spill water or drink on it 3, 4 days later, it doesn't run because it hasn't fully chemically hardened.
huh.
And even though it's dry to the touch, you're right with the pen, you touch it with your hand, it doesn't smudge.
Huh.
I find that to be a very good analogy.
Yeah, and that would be a good way to test it without accidentally rubbing anything off your kit. There's also, I just recently, a friend of mine here in Korea, who's another expat here in Korea like me, just sent me some, he ordered a bunch of like Pledge, like floor polish. And I guess he of course, he had to order it in like a huge container, which is like a lifetime supply. So he separated some into a smaller container and sent me some of that. So I'm going to try some of that out. And hopefully that will also help, you know, hold everything on there. Have you ever tried using that?
I've got some. I'm one of the very few Australians who do have them. Actually, I got 3 bottles. I'm very greedy.
Yeah.
What I find it to be very useful is because when you airbrush it, it's so thin, the gloss sheen is not very strong. So I find it amazing that once you've done your model, you spray down a coat of it, you apply your decals, and then you protect your decals with another coat of future. But it's not glossy enough that if you put down some matte coats and do some weathering, it doesn't come through. If you want a very heavy showroom gloss, then you're better off looking for a different type of paint than future.
Yeah, basically what I'm just looking for that is just to you know, help the paint be protected.
Yeah, if you don't want it to be very glossy, it's not very glossy in 1 or 2 coats. Once you start going a bit heavy and wet coats, it has a tendency of drying too slowly, and it sort of creates drips and builds up, and it's a bit inconsistent. But it definitely does have its uses.
Yeah, so I'm yet to try. I just got that from him a week or so ago. So I need to do some experimenting with that. Maybe try it on some future projects.
The beautiful thing is the experimentation is going to be very short-lived. It's throw straight in your airbrush and spray immediately. No preparation, no thinning, nothing. It's already pre-thinned and ready to go. Also, if you're working with any clear parts, such as canopies, beam sabers, if you dip it in the future and let it dry, it goes so much clearer and more beautiful.
Yeah, the buddy of mine who sent it to me mentioned that, so I thought that would be useful as well, and I'll have to do a video about that later, because I think that's something people sometimes are asking me about, you know, how to take clear parts that are scratched or something and make them look clear again.
Yeah, just give it a polish and put clear paint on it.
So yeah, I'll have to try that out a bit. Just getting back here, I'm looking at the chat here to see if there's any other questions. It says, what tools do you need to start airbrushing? That I've already kind of talked about that a lot, and there's a lot of that. Is there anything that maybe you didn't mention before that you would like to mention about airbrushing tools you need?
To start off airbrushing, all you really need is the airbrush, a compressor, something to hold your airbrush to pour paints and whatnot. That's something that's overlooked quite often. If you don't have anything and you want to get into it immediately, a roll of towel or toilet paper is quite convenient but a bit unstable. So you need an airbrush stand. The correct solvents to thin and clean out your airbrush. And that's about it.
Yeah. Spray booth, I suppose, it would be depending on what kind of paint you're going to use, depending on the.
As you go down, I mean, try airbrushing first. Airbrushing's not for everyone. If you don't get in the discipline of doing it, you don't enjoy it, you don't find yourself using it often enough, maybe it's not a good idea to throw a fair amount of money at it. A spray booth is very useful if you build it yourself, if you're quite handy, or you buy one off the shelf, which is quite expensive. And then there's just a whole range of tools. Once you're very established, I actually recommend owning 2 airbrushes, as if one goes out of service for any reason and you're in the middle of finishing a project or a competition or whatnot, you don't give up, you jump on your second airbrush. That's where the cheaper Chinese airbrushes come in handy, and just make sure that you have a catalogue of spare parts to replace on hand and not order and wait many weeks or months. When you buy an airbrush, the most important question you need to ask is, can I get spare parts for it? It may be a dream model, it may be beautiful, but if you can't buy parts affordably or quickly, it's not the airbrush for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another question here, someone asked, and I'm not actually sure if this is a serious question, but I guess it maybe is. But they asked, does one purposely overuse clear coat to make his mecha look all slimy?
I've never encountered this question before.
Yeah, same.
To make your, I suppose if you use so much clear coat that it starts to drip, it can have the effect of looking slimy. You can use too much clear coat that it gums up the joints and droops and whatnot, which you can sand back. But if it starts making physical drip marks and pulling marks, that's near impossible to get rid of neatly. So yes, you can apply too much by doing too thick of a wet coat.
Yeah.
It's better to go thinner coats and multiple times, allowing each coat to dry thoroughly.
Have you ever intentionally overused clear coat to achieve a certain like wet or something effect?
I have, and I have made the mistake of parts pulling and whatnot. And sometimes I get a bit impatient and I go a bit too wet. It happens to all of us, but yes, that's happened a few times.
Here's a question. I kind of asked this, but I guess it's a little bit a more specific version of the same question I asked. Is what is your favorite UC Gundam kit? Or sorry, favorite kit, from a UC series.
Favorite kit from the UC series is the Zaku 2 F2. That kit only has 2 seam lines. It's very, very quick to build. Its articulation is quite nice, doesn't fall apart, and the detail is very, very charming. It's probably an ideal kit to give to someone for the first time they've ever built a model before. And I've revisited it more than once due to how pleasant I've found it, and I've got more to revisit again in the future.
You're talking a little bit older HGUC kit, right?
This one isn't too old. It's from 0083. It's probably more than 10 years old now, but it's not the oldest one. Some of the really old Zakus are a bit terrible.
Yeah.
But this one's the nicest Zaku, even though it's a more updated Zaku canon anime-wise.
Yeah, I like that. Actually, I don't think I've ever built an F2 kit, but I like the way it looks. I'll have to get around to building one someday.
I definitely recommend it. The experience is very quick to build, seam line, paint and finish. You can almost do it in 2 to 3 days straight.
Someone else asked if you have any tips for hand painting.
Yes, with hand painting, thin the paints quite a lot, more than you would. When you put down a coat, the paint should be so thin that it appears transparent on the plastic, a bit splotchy, so it's going to be very, very ugly, but not thin to the point where it starts to pull in seam lines or panels or whatever. If it pulls, add a little more paint. Paint the parts on skewers as if you're airbrushing. Allow it to thoroughly dry, so you give it a day, and then you keep repeating the process until you've got quite a solid color. So it could be 3 coats, it could be up to 7 coats. It's very, very tedious. It's a very, very long process, but the finish will be akin to airbrushing. It'll be absolutely flawless. And even if you apply a bit of polishing afterwards, it'll be the best hand-painted job you can come across.
So there's definitely a lot of ways to do hand painting, just as good as airbrushing. So.
Yeah, and that's for a large surface. A smaller surface, you only have to thin it 50-50 and just flatly apply it to the small detail with a small brush.
There's, I feel like most people, people who are maybe just getting into painting or something like that, maybe sort of think of airbrushing as like the best way to go, and like if you're really serious about painting, you have to go with airbrushing, and maybe they don't really give too much consideration to hand painting.
I suppose Lincoln would have talked about it in his interview. I didn't watch the full interview, but all airbrushing is a tool. some modelers use it, some modelers don't, but there can be amazing finishes achieved, even champion-winning finishes achieved by hand painting and not airbrushing. So all styles, including rattle can definitely be honed, refined, and appreciated equally.
Actually, we didn't talk about that too much with Lincoln's channel. We talked a lot more about
very surprised.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot more about like the professional aspect, about like his professional experience, and
that would have been excellent, yeah.
From that, so
you won't get that from many.
So we talked about maybe having a follow-up episode again later in the future. So maybe at that time we can talk more about his techniques and stuff.
Definitely. I've hung out with a few professionals, and I did a workshop with some professional figure painters. And when I went out for dinner, because I was told by one of their professional contacts I was kind of cool and whatnot, so I went out for dinner and drinks and got to hang out and talk to them a bit. And they've talked about their experience. There's full-time professional sculptors, painters, and big model-making companies. And I was very surprised to hear that living as a professional modeler is a very tight lifestyle, very short on money, very demanding, very, very hard.
Yeah.
So it's something I've never thought of. I thought, you lay back, you build a few models, you have a laugh, you get paid, but it can actually burn you out and destroy your love for the hobby.
Yeah, that was kind of generally the answer from Lincoln as well. That it's very strenuous.
It's from a few professionals. I've never talked to him about it, but I assume his experience would be very, very similar. And many professionals don't last long, and the ones who do become absolute gods and revered and worshipped.
Speaking of modeling gods, you wanna share your story as we're getting close to the end here?
Yes, I've been doing the Gunpla Builders World Cup in Australia and being involved in organising and whatnot. The 2 times we've had Master Kawaguchi join us. And I was able to have some exclusive contact and chance to hang out, talk to him, pick his brains and whatnot. And he's a really, really cool guy. And I'm very happy to say that he's become a cool friend of mine. And it's so cool that last year we went out drinking. The whole gang, Ghost of Zeon, some other characters that are all well known in Australia, at a Brazilian barbecue place. And it got a bit crazy. We drank far too much, and there was these girls in sequenced bikinis and very big hats came out dancing and twerking and whatnot. And they would drag random people out of their chairs and get them to dance with them, and they were very, very shy. I was very, very drunk, so volunteered, got up, had a bit of a dance with them, and twerked and shook my ass right in front of Master Kawaguchi. It's filmed, it's out there. Not very ashamed of it, but he thoroughly enjoyed it. We've done tequila shots. The man drinks like a god. And afterwards, we sort of broke up, went in random places, and I was just keen to keep partying and partying and partying. And I was taken back to the hostel, got a bit sick, and the next thing I know, I'm being woken up to make sure I haven't died in bed by having an incident and rolling out naked, and it was quite hilarious.
You said that there's video of that event somewhere?
Yes.
You gonna tell us
somewhere out there? I don't exactly know where it is. I know it appeared on Facebook, but it's probably been shared around a few times. I probably should hunt it down because I wouldn't have a problem promoting it myself.
Well, if you find it, definitely send me a link and I'll share it on my page for everyone to check out.
Oh, definitely. It's very, very amusing. I was told I'm a very, very competent dancer, which a lot of people are not aware about about me.
I got to meet him just once last November at the expo there, briefly. He doesn't, from what I could tell, he doesn't speak that much English. How did you communicate with him?
He's pretty much a typical Japanese. His English is absolutely impeccable, but when he's in large crowds, he's very shy. And he's afraid that his English may be critiqued. It's not at a native level. So he'll speak a little bit and he'll allow a translator. But once he's in a more smaller, intimate circle, he opens up.
Cool.
And every time that I've been able to hang out and chat with him, as well as with other people and chat to him and listen to stories and whatnot, he's very keen to share stories, talk about modeling, talk about anything that's probably not Gundam.
Yeah, it was quite weird when I ran into him, because I imagine I did probably catch him off guard a little bit as well, because this was at the expo in Japan, so he was probably like all in Japanese mode, right? So wasn't expecting to talk with a foreigner there. But what was kind of interesting is that we noticed, as my friend and I was going through the expo, he was just like kind of waiting like at the end, like where you go out of the expo, and he's just kind of like standing there, and like there's loads of people there, of course, in the expo, and like no one was really talking to him much or anything.
No, that's quite the typical experience. The first time I saw him last year, I went to the hobby shop the day before the event, just to, it's a hobby shop. You go to hobby shops when you're a hobbyist with your friends. So we're just raiding the place, looking for things to buy, paints, whatnot.
Yeah.
And there's a delegation of 2 Japanese men. Mr. Kawaguchi walks in, looking around, checking out things. And we sort of went, oh, shit, here is he a day early. I sort of made eye contact with him. He made eye contact with me. I knew who he was. I don't know what he
knew who you were too.
It's just sort of like, fuck, I'm shy. I'm shell-shocked. I'm sort of starstruck. And I'm not normally starstruck. I've met celebrities and whatnot through work and whatnot. And it's sort of a case of, I don't care. But when you meet someone that you sort of like, I idolized this guy when I was a younger modeler. It's just sort of a case of, do I come up to him? Do I not bother him? What do I do? Eventually, he left, we left, and then I had a chance to be introduced to him the next day, and it was like, yeah, you're the guy from the hobby shop.
Yeah, I was just kind of interested, or it was quite strange that I didn't see anyone like going up to him and talking to him at all. I thought like a lot of people would want to be like.
The events, he actually made himself available. He looked at all the models. He stood around, he took photos, he talked to the odd person, but he would sort of just walk around in circles, looking, observing, talking to the odd person, talk to his colleagues, but I suppose he's there in work mode, and he sort of talks to him, and he does some small talk. But he's just there working, and that's generally the same experience. He's there to observe and be seen, and then later on, when you get invited back of house, he's a lot more chatty.
Yeah. That would be
he's
cool.
Also quite chatty on Facebook too. If you've seen his personal accounts, he shows off his other models, his battleships, his fondness with Star Wars and all that.
I've seen Facebook posts of it. I want to say I follow his page, but I don't really see much of it too often. But yeah, I was the same kind of way, as that like I don't think I would be too starstruck about seeing most celebrities or anything either. And then like even at the event there, and the friend that I was with was like, oh, Kawaguchi-san's over there. I was like, oh, okay. Like I was still doing my filming and everything. Like, I wasn't gonna be like, oh my god, I'm like going over there. Hey.
Oh, he does get a lot of that. But I suppose in some of those events where I suppose to be a lot more popular in, let's say, the Philippines or Japan or whatnot, in those events they generally put him behind lock and key. Behind some bollards and stuff, because everyone wants to talk to him in their native tongue. So he probably feels a little more flexible and comfortable, that people are less likely to approach him if he doesn't speak a lot of English or something.
Yeah. Once we got there to the end, like near him, I couldn't resist having to go have a little bit of a starstruck moment with him there.
He's very humble. He's very happy to meet people, have photos taken, shake hands, and talk. But I suppose he just shares himself out. He probably doesn't want to be seen talking to the same person for the whole event and being a whole. He probably wants to share himself around.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so if anyone else has any last question, any last quick question, please ask away in the chat there. Alan, in the meantime, where should people plug, or where should people follow you? What?
Generally, Facebook. I post everything on there. Mokana Man on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I post twice a week on YouTube. It's Mokana Man on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I don't. I do plug myself a lot in the groups and whatnot. But if you sort of search for any tutorials or looking for any sort of advice, people just automatically find me. If you're looking for any sort of information or typing in how to hand paint, how to mask, how to do whatever, and you're looking at the results, and you see my little Mokana Man handle, click on that first.
Yeah. Definitely. If you guys have never watched any of Alan's videos, or if you're not subscribed to his channel, you should be, and check out, especially like if you're interested in learning about some of these more technical skills and airbrushing techniques and all of that stuff. It's a good source of information. One last question here. We'll take it from a fellow YouTuber here. Strider Prime asked, remember when you...
Strider for a long time.
Yeah. He said, remember when you and... Huh?
I'm just saying hello to him.
He said, remember when you and Gunpla Nut had a build-off of the G Savior kit? And
yeah, has he judged it yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe he's getting to that.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the results, mate, because I still don't want to watch it.
Yeah, he said that you asked him to review it. I guess maybe he's still typing more of that. So in the meantime, you want to give us a backstory of what he's talking about?
Well before build fighters was a thing, Gunpla Nut found some G Savior model kits, the high grades. And they're a very good model kit, but G Savior is a terrible CGI anime or Gundam anime based in the very far future of the end of the Universal Century. And it's so unbearable and hard to watch, it's impossible to sit down, stomach, and enjoy it. And the only bit of merchandise you can find is the movie, the book, and the only high-grade kit, which is a very cool mech and a very cool model. So he bought one for me, one for himself, and we did a build-off to see who would do the better job, with the punishment that they would have to sit down, watch it, and review the anime on their YouTube channel.
Strider said in the chat there, he said, I'm waiting for the photos of your kits, of your kits.
Okay, I'll talk to Gunpla Nut and I'll arrange to get them sent to you, mate. They're probably a bit buried.
I don't know. I don't remember if I've ever seen you doing work on the G Savior, not that I can remember. So
that's probably 4 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, I guess it must be.
It's before you were on YouTube, because I don't remember you being active then.
No. I was watching stuff, probably. It's a good mix of things, but maybe not. Gunpla Nut is one that I don't think that I can remember I saw that many videos of.
Here's a smaller channel, sort of goes on and off air, has multiple interests, and it's more sort of like a vlog channel. So it's sort of, of reviews a movie that you may have seen, reviews toys, reviews all sorts of things that may be in or out of your interest span. It's not all Gunpla.
Well, that's cool.
I don't think he's made content in a little while, but I could be wrong, and could have, because I haven't really been following modeling much on YouTube.
Yeah, these days I'm so busy on YouTube just trying to keep up with everything Trump's doing. That's pretty much the majority of my YouTube time these days.
Politically, he's interesting, but I do admit that probably most of my YouTubing is political commentary and interest and whatnot.
Yeah. All right, well, Alan, thank you so much. It's great. We haven't actually ever talked like sort of in person-esque. So
no, we haven't.
Really
We've done a lot of chat and private messaging and whatnot, but you are right. We've never talked face-to-face before.
Yeah. So it's nice. I really appreciate you taking some time to sit down and have a chat. And yeah, hopefully some of the folks, like I said, who are interested in learning more about airbrushing will head over there and check out some of your content, or just get in touch with you, because very knowledgeable and friendly and helpful person to know. So thank you so much.
Not a problem, and if you ever wish me to come back, I'm happy to do so. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll let you know. All right, and just thank everyone for watching. Thank you, Alex, again for adminning there or moderating in the chat. Thank you, Alex, and thanks, guys, for hanging out. If you guys are watching this later and you missed it live, if you want to check out these live videos live, just make sure you follow my Facebook page where I post that stuff up. So with that, see you guys next time.
Catch you guys later.
Bye-bye. Okay.